Just can't make any noise, okay? So you know how I was born in the Netherlands, but we immigrated to New Zealand when I was a baby and my brother was 3.
It's the middle of the night.
Well, my mother used to write letters to her mum,
trouble
my
sleeping.
grandmother, every week about our childhood and
You're
about her
lying next
experience
to me.
as a mother. First, it was just about me and my brother, and then when my little sister was born, it was about the 3 of us.
I'm thinking about what I would like to share with you about my mother's story. It's a sad story. It's a hard story to hear, but a story that needs to be told and heard anyway.
When my grandmother died, my mum went back to the Netherlands to say goodbye and attend the funeral. And she got given back all the letters that she had written. All those years they'd kept them. And this is what they look like. They're called aerograms, really thin letters that folded into an envelope. And this is how you fold them up. And then you tuck over the flaps. And if you had lots to say, you could write on this really thin paper and add it inside the aerogram. And there's a bit about me in here that's quite funny.
My mother was born in Haifa.
It says, do you want to hear some Dutch?
She was one of the
Die
first
vervelt zich
babies to
snel.
be given in an Israeli
She gets bored easily. Nu beiden ouder worden, zie je duidelijk dat het een jongen meisje zijn. Now that she's getting older, you can clearly see that she's a little girl. Ze hebben toch beiden andere interessen. They both have very different interests.
My
Her and
grandmother
her brother.
took the children back to the Netherlands, leaving her marriage and her children's father in Israel.
Ze hebben toch beiden andere
My
interessen.
grandmother placed the
Both
children
her and her
into a
brother have
Jewish
different
children's
interests.
home,
Ze hebben
saying she
toch
was
vaak,
unable
nu
to
vaak
care for them
ruzie.
while she worked.
They now often fight. Marijke krijgt zo haar eigen
The
ideeën.
person who ran the
Marijke is
children's
developing
home,
her own ideas.
mostly for
Het is momenteel
Jewish
niet
children,
makkelijk. She's not easy at
an
the moment.
extraordinary man.
Het is ook haar leeftijd.
Although he
It's
was
also
not
her
Jewish
age.
himself, he helped
Met haar broer
Jewish
kan je
children
praten.
escape
With
the
her brother you
atrocities
can
of the
talk.
Holocaust, saving
Ze heeft een
hundreds,
plaats voor
possibly
haar
thousands
hoofd.
of lives.
She has a plate for her
He was
head.
later recognized
I think
for
that
this
is a Dutch
heroism.
saying. I think it means I was stubborn. Je moet wel lachen. Haar Engels is prima.
My grandmother
You have
from
to
the
laugh.
outset
Her
promised the
English
children
is good.
that they would eventually be able to come home and live with her again. That day never came. She would visit them
Buiten dat ze
but every
overal
time she
omjankt,
left without them.
other than that she cries
They were
about everything,
reabandoned.
ze is best vrolijk. She is quite jolly.
My mother grew up in this
So that's the
children
type of
home,
things she would write to her mum,
surrounded
my
by
grandmother, about us.
predominantly orphan Jewish children, but she had 2 living parents. Unlike many children of Holocaust survivors who were
And I
called
wanted to
by
show
royal
you
candles,
something.
as they
Have you
were
seen
seen
this
as that
painting in the
life
house?
that survived, and that they bore the
I haven't
wounds
told
of
you
their
about it though,
parents'
eh?
trauma without the scars.
So this painting was given to me by my great
My
uncle,
mother
so my grandmother's
was
brother,
instead
and he asked me to
felt
look
very
after it for the
abandoned,
family.
and she didn't know
The
why she
painting
couldn't
looks
go
very
home.
Dutch. You can see a canal, a bridge, a very Dutch looking
When my
houses.
mum was my age, in her early 40s, we moved back to the Netherlands for just under a year. I was 12 at the time. I got to go to school, and I got to be with my cousins and aunties and uncles.
And this
and
painting survived the
grandparents.
Holocaust with my grandmother and her family
During this
and
time,
hiding in the
my
Netherlands.
mother accessed the files from her time in the children's home.
This painting survived with them.
There was a social
So my
worker
great
with
uncle
her
asked
when
me
she
to look
first
after it for
read
the
these
family
files.
and keep it in the family.
She was reading about herself for the first time through the looked after
It's a very special painting. I love looking at it, and I love thinking about our ancestors looking at it, all the eyes that have looked at it, and all the things it has seen, and now it watches over us, and we look after it. Maybe it will be yours one day to look after and treasure for our lineage.
She now speaks about how sad she is that she can't remember so much of her childhood.
So when my grandmother was about 14 and her older brother and their parents went to live in an attic to hide as they were Jewish, and the Jews were being rounded up to live in the ghettos and then taken to concentration camps.
It's too much for the person to bear.
My family paid a non-Jewish family to hide them in their attic. They didn't get much food and they could only bring a few things.
The social worker.
Can you imagine being stuck in an attic while you're a teenager for a few years in a tiny space?
That was for Holocaust survivors and for a short period.
Her parents would create lessons for her, like what you'd learn at school.
This benefit,
and I guess they would have had to create a routine for themselves
to help overcome the trauma that they had endured.
That's such a good question, if they'd get hot. I'm sure in summer it got really hot in an attic and then really cold in winter. Yeah, you're right. They would have had to be really quiet. Maybe they established a signal from the family who owned the house when there was possible further danger. How did people know if they were Jews? Well, Jewish people at that time had to wear a Star of David, a six-sided yellow star on their clothes.
My mum was able to use some
At the time it was well known what religion a family was.
To help pay for
the Nazis slowly implemented their regime over many years.
Recognizing that trauma lives on until it has a place, a conscious place, a place at the table to be seen, heard, connected with, and witnessed.
So the family decided that the best way to survive was to hide and be hidden. And that's what saved them. So many families were caught and sent to concentration camps to be killed. That's where my grandfather and his family went, and he was the only one who survived from his immediate family. How did he survive? I guess because he was young, he was a teenager too, and fit. The story was that he only just survived. Had the war ended any later, he would have died as well. He was about 18 or 19 when the camps were liberated. And he was obviously meant to live. And because he lived and met my grandmother who lived,
feel as sad anymore.
they had my mum. And my mum had
She's
me.
making new memories.
And then I had you. If my grandparents hadn't survived and met after the war, you wouldn't be who you are.